I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins, a professional psychologist. I'm going to share with you how to take control over your own life without being a belligerent jerk. This is really important because as you gain control over your own life, you get to have more freedom. And by the end of this video, you will see exactly how that can be done. The model that I'm about to share with you is one that I developed over about 3 decades of clinical experience, and specifically in working with parents. Here's why this is relevant. Think about when you're a baby. How much control do you have over your own life? Yeah, hardly any. You can make a big noise and a big stink, and that's about it. As you get older, you gain more control. So a child of 7 or 8 years old obviously has more control than a baby who was just born. But what about when that child becomes 10 or 11 or 12 or 13? They have even more control. Hopefully by the time we're an adult, we have full control over our lives, right? Now, I know that there is some small print. I get it. But for our intents and purposes today, let's just say that when you are grown up, you get to have full control over your life. Why don't I feel like I have more control then? Why do I feel so out of control? Here's the part that I want to share with you from the model that is so applicable to us as adults to take control over our own life. The visual model that I'm referring to here is the same one that I share with parents, and I want to give you a copy of that. In fact, go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/stages, S-T-A-G-E-S. I'll explain that in just a minute. That will give you a visual copy that you can have for yourself. You can print it out. You can refer back to it anytime that you want. The visual model is helpful because it shows how control and maturity are related. So on the maturity scale, for example, we start out as babies, we don't have very much control. See, control is on the up and down axis. As we get more mature, we get to have more control. Our control grows. The part under the line is the part we get for ourselves. The part over the line is the control that other people take in our life. And to have full freedom, we want to be the ones that are in control. So let's talk just a little more about the intricacies of maturity. This is what I call moral development, how you make your choices and your decisions. I've divided it into 3 stages. You'll see that on the visual model as well. Stage 1 is characterized by selfishness, being self-centered, being concerned mostly about me, me, me. It's demanding, it's manipulative. Sounds a little like a 2-year-old, doesn't it? That's why we use this model for parenting too, because immature kids, young kids, are very focused on themselves. They don't spend a lot of time thinking about how their behavior impacts other people, or if I'm not going to sleep tonight, is mom going to miss out? See, they're not thinking that. It's all about me, me, me. But it's about stage, not age. Because people at older ages could still be stuck on stage 1 in terms of their moral development. You'll notice in the title I mentioned belligerent jerk. If you're being a belligerent jerk, you're on stage 1. If you're being selfish and demanding, you're on stage 1. If you're fighting and yelling and screaming, you're on stage 1. And we all go there sometimes, okay? I'm not saying that in an accusatory way. I'm saying it so that you'll identify that behavior, that belligerent jerk behavior, is stage 1. If you are on stage 1, you don't get to have very much control over your own life. And for adults, this becomes very concerning when we lose our freedom. I got to do a keynote recently at the state prison. And as I was meeting with these inmates and realizing that they are incarcerated, they are locked down. Why? Well, there's a different reason, a different story for each of them. These are good people whose behavior at some point violated the rights of others. And that meant that they got to lose some control over their own life. So do you see where this connects? Either you're in control or someone has to step in. And once you're an adult, it's not your parents anymore. it's the state. So that's why it's so important to take control over our own life. Let's go to stage 2. At stage 2, we stop fighting and start cooperating. At stage 2, we don't want any trouble. We want to keep the peace. So we're going to comply and go along with things. And you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Let's work together here. It's more of a cooperative approach. You get to have more control over your life when you're on stage 2. When I mentioned that I gave that keynote at the state prison and I was speaking with inmates, I've also spent some time, especially earlier in my career, in the courts. And I've testified in cases, I've done evaluations, I've done child custody examinations, all kinds of things that involve the court setting. And I've watched this. This is so interesting to me. When someone comes in and is standing before the judge in the court, the judge has to decide what's going to happen with this person. And it usually involves some level of restriction of their freedom because of whatever brought them before the court. I have seen people go in as a belligerent jerk, swearing and profanity all over the place and being really disrespectful toward the judge. Okay, you get the picture. How do you think it goes for them? Yeah, not so well. The judge responds to that by taking more control over that person's life. Now, I've seen other people go in a very humble, contrite willingness to cooperate, which is the big hallmark factor of stage 2, by the way, and they get a very different response from the judge. See, the judges in these cases have the flexibility to take more control or less control depending on the circumstances of the case. The main thing they're looking for is the moral maturity of that person that's standing in front of them. And for them to show cooperation and humility and some remorse for the rights of others that they have violated puts the judge in a position where the judge typically will take less control over that person's life. They will give a more lenient kind of a penalty or a sentence in those cases. I've seen it time and time again. That's why we can apply this model to taking control of your life. Look, if you're being a belligerent jerk, you're on stage 1, and that by definition will take away control out of your life. It won't give you more control. I think it's a false sense of power for some people. You see this all the time, like in the movies and things, you know, that bravado or that kind of belligerent approach to life, because it gives them a false sense of control. When the reality of it is they can lose control as a result. Now let's go to stage 3. This is the highest stage on the graph, on the model that I've shared with you, of moral development. At stage 3, we do the right things for the right reasons. So you'll notice that there's some morality involved here. There are values and ethics that drive the decision making. At stage 3, a really important characteristic kicks in. I call it empathy. And I define that by understanding and caring. Those two components, understand and care how other people feel. So at stage 3, it really matters to you what kind of impact you're having on other people. I think at the earlier stages, at 1 especially, and even at 2, there's not a full appreciation for the impact that my behavior has on other people. But at stage 3, it's there, it's present. Service is important at stage 3. And another important concept that we call initiative. Initiative is where you see what needs to be done and you do it. A quick example, if you were to walk into your kitchen right about now, in the average home right now, there are things that need to be done in the kitchen. Now, let's use an example of a teenager. For example, I had one in my office not too long ago where we were having this very conversation. And I asked that teenage girl, how does mom know that the dishes need to be done? Is this some kind of magic? Does she have some extrasensory powers or something? How does she know that the dishes need to be done? This 13-year-old girl, she's like, oh, she can see it. And she's kind of rolling her eyes, right? And then that led to the next question. Can you see it? And of course she can. But what's the difference? It's initiative. See, the daughter could see that the dishes needed to be done, but she didn't take the initiative to actually do it. She was even willing to do it if mom asked her to, sometimes with a little attitude. But how much more maturity does it take to see that the dishes need to be done and just do it, just take care of it? What is it in your life that you could look around and notice needs to be done? And where does your brain go with that? If you really want to take control over your life without being a belligerent jerk, you'll start to notice what needs to be done and take care of it. You don't have to be asked by anyone. This is part of moral development. It's the maturity of stage 3, initiative. It's one of the biggest indicators of that level of maturity. Look, freedom is not free. Freedom is not free. It comes at the price of personal responsibility. When you're willing to pay that price, you can have the freedom. And it comes as you develop the maturity that is demonstrated by these 3 stages that I've shared with you here today. Hopefully that's giving you some ideas of where you can go with this information. Remember to grab that model that I shared with you, drpauljenkins.com/stages, STAGES. Remember, it's about stage, not age. You've got this.